Dum dum de dum dum. Yes, I'm a dum dum. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, how about now, my dear?
Alright, I gotta refresh.
Ah, there we go. It says stop streaming, so it means I actually started it this time. Yay! You think after... How long have I been doing this now? Like 2 months that I'd actually have it right, but I still don't. So, we will try this.
We're good.
We will try this again for the third time in case it didn't go out. But welcome to episode 205 Beyond the Trailer Park. And Morgan and Bridget Fitch is with us tonight. Sammy is, I'm going to guess, working. So, how are you, ladies?
Doing good.
Making it.
Yeah, it's Monday.
Yeah.
Only 4 more days to get through this week at work.
Yeah, I actually have an unusual thing where I'm also off tomorrow. Although, not an ideal situation because that means then I have to work 5 days in a row until my next day off. So it makes for one tired puppy by the end of the week, but oh well. I'll take the 2 days off because I had a hell of a time waking up again today. Imagine that. So, anything new and exciting we should know about?
For me, no. I'm just waiting on I've got some stuff in the air, just waiting on people to get back with me.
Good stuff?
Yeah, good. It would be good stuff. I'm hoping it's, they come back with good news, but we'll see.
Which reminds me, did you ever get your license situation straightened out?
Yes, I'm licensed in D.C.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
But not Mississippi.
No, I will not be licensed in Mississippi.
Ever?
Probably not, because their licensing situation here is a nightmare.
No.
They don't accept any. I would have to retake the bar exam.
So
bueno.
I'm not practicing here. I'm not. Yeah, but I'm just still basically doing law clerk stuff here. But yeah. So.
Well, at least you got one piece of bullshit.
My life sucks, but it's fine.
Yeah, it's like I was saying before we went live, is that it's really just so frustrating to see somebody like you and with Bridget going through some personal issues, with her husband losing his job. And it's like, then there's me who basically, I won't say I have it made because financially I'm below poverty level, but I can make do with what I got. And I won't say I don't have any worries, but, where you're just starting out. And to start out with the mess that you have, especially your licensing and stuff, it's so frustrating to watch, because I know a lot of other people that are going through similar situations, and it's just like, when I was your age...
It's like I can't get a break.
Yeah.
It's like one thing after the other, and I mean, it's fine. I wasn't planning on practicing in Mississippi, but then...
shit happens.
Yeah, I thought that, I had this, basically, I've been trying to get policy jobs and stuff in D.C., or in at least a jurisdiction that I can wait in. Now, I can wait in, 4 years, in 4 years, but I don't have 4 years to just kind of hang out. Yeah. Or unless the court changes the rules, which they're not going to, because they don't want young people to practice law here. They want us to leave.
Yeah. That's because young people know what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, so they want us to leave. Yeah. So I guess in, 30 years, the state's going to be completely fucked, but,
Well, it's going to be kind of like where I'm living now. I mean, where I am in PA, and this is not a dish against the people that are here, because there are some very nice people here. But basically, we are a retirement community.
Yeah.
I mean, and the kids know that they will have to leave town if they want to make it. Or just stay here and do nothing. Well, do nothing in the sense that, we have the factory jobs, or we have the three restaurants, we have Rite Aid, and we have Dollar General. That's it. That's what you're going to, put your life to, or you go out into the quote real world,
Yeah.
and at least make an attempt at it. But then you run into situations like what you have, where you're trying to make a run at it, but you can't because of bureaucracy.
Well, yeah, and also nobody wants to give some redneck from Mississippi
Mm-hmm.
a job if you're from DC. So yeah, just completely, basically, I'm at the point where I'm kind of wishing I'd never gone to law school.
And that's a shame.
I wish I wouldn't have gone.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did.
Well,
So
that makes somebody.
Well,
but regretfully, I can't help you on the financial or job front, though.
well, what about Tennessee? Are you close enough to Tennessee where you could practice there?
I am, but I would have to pay $1,500.
Oh,
Yeah, to get my license there, and I don't have that money because I don't. Yeah, it's just
It's
it's
because,
an Ouroboros.
yeah, that's just crazy. Well, hopefully Sammy's having better luck all around than. I know this is going to sound bad, but I don't mean it to be than what's going on with you two right now, because I know both of you are in dire straits. I mean, not quite dire, but you're in tough straits, and it really sucks. So
ours is about to be as soon as the severance pay runs out.
yeah,
I did take a part-time job, and that lasted like 3 days. They were killing me.
oh, I could have told you that, but
Yeah, they were scheduling me to work
yeah.
until like
Oh,
2 a.m. and I have to get up at 4 to go to my other job.
well, that's the thing you tell, and this is what kills me about not picking on Target or Walmart specifically, any like convenience store or any of the so-called starting jobs. It's like you tell them you're available, and I had this problem even where I mean, I told them these are the days I am available to work. I will work any day, but the ones I say I can't. Oh, no problem. So they schedule me on the days that I say I cannot work. I'm like, what part of I cannot work do you not understand? What part of I can only work till 10 o'clock or whatever do you not understand? When I say I'm not available, that means I'm not available. That means you are not legally allowed to schedule me for that time. And if you have to, then you need to find another person, because obviously I'm not the one for the job. It's crazy because I was contemplating getting a second job. But talking to other employees, I find out that this is what they do. They schedule on days you tell them you can't work, and then they expect you to find coverage.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, I don't work.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm too old for that shit. But so to delve in, well, before we delve in, well, we kind of covered it, but we've been really sporadic with our episodes. Part of the reason is, as I said, all four of us work, and we all work full time. I kind of sort of work full time, but not really. But I am kind of available on call 24/7. So be that as it may, so I could be sitting up here, go down and get something to eat, realize they're busy, and end up working for 2 hours. So, and I'm also actually scheduled to work on my days off. Imagine that. But that's by choice. They didn't do that without me knowing. I volunteered for it because we are short-handed. So, scheduling has been kind of a bitch, and most of it is my fault because come Mondays, I'm usually whipped, especially now because we're in the midst of hunting season, and where I live, hunting is huge. We will, like on a normal Friday and Saturday, let's say we do 100 people. We probably do more than that, but we'll double that. So it makes for a long weekend. I usually end up putting in 30 hours of my 40-hour week in 3 days. And 10-hour days are not conducive for me because I don't move that well. So
Yeah.
right now we are tentatively going to do a show next week if I can get the outline finished. Um, that way we don't have to try to do a show on the 23rd and we don't have to try to do a show on the 30th, although we may just do a bullshit show just because, me and one or two other people might be bored shitless with nothing to do on that Monday. I don't know yet, so we'll play that by ear. But we will be back come the 6th of January, and we do have a couple topics lined up. I'm still doing research on a couple of them. So I apologize for the sporadic episodes, but it just, when you have 4 people that all work full time, 3 of us outside the home. I believe Sammy works at home. It makes it difficult to pull together a podcast. And I would much rather cancel a show than to put out a half-assed episode. That's just
Mm.
me. I mean, I've gotten to the point, like, I even almost ran into that with tonight's topic because it was like, by the time I finished work last night, I was so tired I didn't even want to look at it. I mean, I just kind of aimlessly stared at my computer for 2 hours and then went to bed. I was so tired I couldn't even think. So, but yeah, we're gonna try to do better come January, and I'm also gonna take the time to learn some more features of Streamlab to maybe be able to do segments again. Such as Swat Waffles of the Week, or even resurrect Deb's creation moments because I do subscribe to that newsletter, or something similar. So we'll see what's up, but tentatively plan on a show next week. It'll be a Woo Mooster show, and no, it will not be Jillian. But it'll be somebody I haven't quite yet determined yet if she's worse than Jillian. I'm gonna have to say yes because she is supposedly a registered nurse, a real live registered nurse. So, and she's into all type of woo, anti-vax, anti-GMO. The MRC5 cell line is full of cancer and yada 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 yada. Yeah, but the one good thing
One
so
of
far
those.
is that she's only had an online presence, as far as I can tell, since last October. Wait a minute. Yeah, last year, 2018. I gotta remember we're in December now. So she hasn't been around that long, but the whole appeal to authority thing is really big. I've noticed in some comments on her Facebook or her fan page, public Facebook page, whatever. A lot of people, oh, I'm so glad to hear this from the medical establishment. One registered nurse is not the medical establishment. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting little take. And basically, I think what we may do is there's one specific video I want to focus on next week. So it'll be kind of an introduction to her and her bullshit, which is biblical perspective on vaccines.
Alrighty.
Yeah, well, what's funny is I just lightly looking into it, I didn't want to pre-bias myself before listening. I was expecting the Kent Hovind line of reasoning, or the my body is my temple line of reasoning.
Mm.
No, she doesn't go that way because the Bible verses she pulls up are like, what the fuck does that have to do with vaccines? It's the whole spiritual warfare bullshit.
Oh, yay.
So
Sure does.
I
I was gonna be
haven't.
like, what verse did she use? Jesus wept.
Oh,
She just pulled random ones.
well, in some regards, yes, because okay, like you sit there thinking, okay, well, you'd think, oh, well, God gave the fruit, fruits for us to eat and all the seeds and yada, yada, yada. But no, she goes the completely opposite direction of it's spiritual warfare and GMOs and vaccines are from Satan. And it's like, oh boy. So I haven't I pretty much have the introduction done as far as who she is. Well, who I think she is, based on her own words and stuff like that. But I haven't delved into the biblical part of it yet. I'm trying to. I have the verses that she uses. I'm trying to get the actual context to it.
Mm-hmm.
Is she even using these verses in even a remote sense of rightness as far as, okay, spiritual warfare, is this even talking about, that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to get the background context and then how she interprets it, because according to, not to give too much away, but according to her information, she is a minister. And my first reaction to that was, bitch, I know way more about the Bible than you do, so that's saying
She sounds
something.
about as nutty as Marianne Williamson.
Who said that Charles Manson? She was like, I have been informed that the president did not pardon Charles Manson posthumously. Yeah, because earlier she tweeted that Trump had
What?
pardoned Charles Manson
Oh my
after
god.
his death. And then she later corrected and tweeted, and she was like, I'm glad to see that this is incorrect. And I was just like, where did you even get that information from? Like, Trump is doing enough crazy shit. You don't have to make up that he's, like, pardoning Charles Manson.
I have. How do I put this?
Somebody said somebody screenshotted her correction and said, "This is the greatest ad for vaccine use I've ever seen."
Yeah. I mean, it's like I've been incidentally, not intentionally, following Williamson for too long to admit.
Call it that.
Okay, when I was into the paranormal, of course, her whole Courses in Miracles bullshit came up.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember if I was a guest host per se on an episode she appeared on another show, show that I was associated with as a guest. I wasn't a host or anything. And I actually got to speak to her. I mean, briefly. I mean, it's not like, oh, she, told me her every secret.
Yeah.
I forgot about her for a while. And then she appeared on Bill Maher, who is as anti-vaccine as one can be. Your typical, I'm not anti-vaccine. Yeah, honey, you are, because I did a 3-part series on him, and Williamson was on that show. And she was basically shaking her head to everything Bill was saying. So for her to state that she is not anti-vaccine is so full of fucking shit.
Oh, here's the tweet the first one that she did. There is something deeply sinister about Trump pardoning Charles Manson, even posthumously. Dog whistles of the very worst possible kind.
And the thing is, she's not stupid, but she's stupid.
Yeah, I was like, that one was wild. I don't know where she even pulled that one from. But then she later corrected herself. But still, I was like, what? Who did this?
Well, the thing I've noticed with her over the years, and to be honest, I've been following her probably for 12 years now. And it's like, if you notice, she will not retract or apologize for a tweet unless she's pushed, unless she faces backlash. She never would have said, oh, this is what I mean about her recent anti-vax tweet. And
Yeah, I mean, but this was a thing that you could either, like, yes, this did happen, or no, it didn't. So, I
well,
mean, that's why she corrected it.
yeah. Well, no, she just, if it fits her agenda, and this is what makes her so dangerous, in my opinion, is that if it fits her overall agenda, which there's nothing wrong inherently with peace, love, and happiness, it's when you take it to her extreme, it becomes, well, and not just her specifically, but it can be taken to extremes. She becomes dangerous because, just as we see with religion and politics, while it's not a quote Christian religion per se, her spirituality, her spiritual beliefs do influence what she does. And she's not a thinker. She reacts.
No.
It's all gut instinct. It's all, oh, the universe led me this way. It's, yeah, I kind of have an outline kind of sort of started, but it's like, do I really want to do this? So I think depending on what happens with the next set of debates, or I might even wait till whether to see if she makes it as the candidate, which I know she's not going to.
No, she's not going to. But she's just as qualified as 45 is,
Oh, well, I don't buy
You are
it.
so on, girlfriend.
Yeah. I'm not into someone being qualified to be president. The only person that can say they're qualified to be president, and this is with obvious caveats, is somebody that's already been president for 4 years. Because nobody's qualified.
That's true, but can you think of anybody who's least qualified?
Well, yeah, okay, if you put it that way, yes. But yeah, it's just, there's just so much crazy going on, and that's kind of why I picked this article, because it's kind of mind-numbingly obvious, but I think it's something that even as atheists we need to be reminded of. And this was an article from Friendly Atheists, and it was a guest post by Nicholas Frame, who I know absolutely nothing about, and I didn't really look into who he was, so we'll leave it at that. But as I was kind of reading through it, I kind of, and seeing where Frame was coming from, I may, and that's a key word for me, have to agree with him. And there is one big caveat that I will throw in there as we go through this. Keep in mind is that while I agree with the sentiment of his article that the Bible is not a 2,000-year-old book, I don't necessarily believe or accept that Christ even existed as described in the Bible, if he existed at all. I'm not quite a mythicist. I lean that way, but I do believe if Christ existed, he's not the character we have described in the Bible. I think what we see in the Bible is a amalgamation of many different characters, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a bit, but basically the Bible is the claim. And we have no eyewitnesses. We have no contemporary historical corroboration for his existence, his execution, etc., etc. But if I were to accept the New Testament claims about Christ, for the sake of a discussion, it would boil down to what he states at the end. Basically that he goes, so what's the point of all this? Who cares if we say the New Testament is 2,000 years old, 1,600 years old, or 400 years old, which we'll get to. You should care because flippantly saying, I don't believe in some 2,000-year-old mythological book, which I know all of us have said at some point or other, I know I have, you immediately grant Christians, whom you might be debating, a falsely earned upper hand, and you lose the opportunity to educate them. Now, that's here either near but in the end, that doesn't really matter whether you're trying to educate, because you can't educate someone that's, that set in their mindset. But he goes, if you incorrectly grant the New Testament is a 2,000-year-old book, then you are admitting that the book was written and compiled within Jesus' lifetime, or immediately thereafter. In reality, none of the writers of the Gospels knew Jesus personally or were first-hand eyewitnesses to the miracles claimed in the text. So basically, I mean, this is obviously his conclusion, but basically saying, and he goes through, we'll say point by point, just for lack of a better word, why we shouldn't be saying that it's a 2,000-year-old book. And as I said, the caveat being is that is if we, for the sake of discussion, accept that Jesus existed at all.
Yeah.
So, and that was one of the criticisms to the article, is that while they understood the sentiment of the article, you're granting that Christ even existed. Well, we're going to grant that assumption for the moment, even though it might or might not. When I argue apologetics, I try to argue from the point of view that my adversary is presenting. So if they say Jesus exists, I will hypothetically accept that and try to dismantle the argument from within, instead of saying, well, no, Jesus, whatever. It depends on what tack you take and how you debate. So one of the first points he brings up is that if you subtract, well, this was written in 2015, so add 4 more years on, 2,000 years prior to this year, so it would be, would land us square in the middle of Jesus's life. And he goes, it's likely that a book detailing Jesus's many parables, miracles, divinity, and death would be circulating before himself had even began his prophetic apocalyptic crusade. So basically saying, the chances of a book even existing during Christ's life would be nil. I mean, according to Luke 3:21 through 3:23, Christ didn't even begin his ministry until he was 30 years old.
Mm.
So the chances of a book existing prior to that or during that time period would be pretty slim. In fact, which the first written, we'll say Christian literature, for lack of a better word, as he points out, are Paul's letters and epistles. And those were written around 50 CE. And Paul's writings do predate the 4 Gospels. So you're already talking 20 to 30 years after Christ died before the first bit of information about him is written. And one of the points that Frank brings out was the fact that Paul's letters can be separated basically into 3 groups. One that he addressed to specific communities like Thessalonica. Then you have 4 letters that are addressed to individual people, like Timothy. And then you have Hebrews. Now, for the sake of brevity, we're going to ignore the whole authorship question concerning the Paul.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I know that there is a controversy about, because I know that they're written in different styles, and then so of course there's this question of, did Paul actually write these? And yeah, because it seems like Paul may have been one of many. I mean, I would call him basically. I think Paul, in my opinion, was a grifter. But yeah, so it seems like he probably wasn't the only one. So to give yourself more credibility, you would claim, "Oh yeah, this is Paul's writing."
Yeah,
but yeah, that's a whole other.
Yeah, that could be a whole topic unto itself. But yeah, there's a lot of question marks. As far as Pauline authorship, and it's not a new question mark. It dates actually back to the 16th century. But most scholars agree that the four of the epistles in Paul's were
Pseudepigrapha.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, not Sudafed.
Yeah, not the sinus medication, but basically Ephesians, 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, and Titus are questionable. And there are at least 2 others plus Hebrews that are questioned. So yeah, we could drive that whole, I mean, I know I'm going to do this. I think it was Bart Ehrman. I might have my authors wrong, who wrote Forged, or was that, I might be confusing authors, but there's a couple, received, we'll say, books concerning the forgeries in Paul. And I think it's Bart Ehrman that wrote one of them. I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden, and I didn't write it down in my notes, so yeah. But one thing that a lot of people forget, and we'll hit on why in a minute, is that Paul was not an eyewitness to any of Christ's ministry.
Mm-mm.
He didn't know the dude. Okay?
It was Bart Ehrman.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't remember. I had some because I was reading stuff on David Fitzgerald and Richard Carrier as well, and I'm like, oh fuck, which one of them wrote it? So
Yeah, it's forged writing in the name of God while the Bible's authors are not who we think they are.
right, yeah, that's the book, and I do recommend it. I have the PDF version for my Kindle, so it's good. It explains a lot.
Very highly rated on Amazon, if that means anything to you. It's like 4.5 stars.
Yeah, well, with the Amazon reviews, you do have to be careful. But yeah, generally it's a very well received book. So, yeah, as I said, Paul was Saul, basically a Pharisee of Pharisees who intensely persecuted the follower of Jesus. I mean, he even says in Philippians 3:5, circumcised on the 8th day of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, in regards to the law of the Pharisees. So,
but again, that's according to him. So,
well, yeah,
I'm curious to know if there were any records of him actually doing this, because it seems to me like he figured out, like, hey, I think this religion thing, this Christian thing might become a thing. So let me get in on the ground up, because it is like, if you see how religions evolve, which is why I find things like Mormonism and Scientology so fascinating, is because those are, I mean, maybe they didn't evolve, it happened 5 years ago, but you can watch them kind of evolve, because we have basically modern records of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and so you have to think that this is this is how basically all religions start off, is there's this there's a leader, there's this and then there's also this vying for power.
Yeah. Well,
If there becomes a power vacuum, which Jesus is, I mean, according to the Bible, he's up in the sky, but up in heaven. So you don't have Jesus there to lead the movement anymore. So there's going to be obviously an obvious power vacuum, and so there's these people that are going to try to jockey for power there. So yeah, part of me wonders if that was, and again, this is a different thing, but something to keep in mind when you're discussing the letters of Paul, because he didn't know Jesus. He didn't.
It kind of goes along with the one hypothesis that the Romans created Christianity. Who's to say Paul wasn't part of that, even though he was a Jew? I mean, there's so many, because we lack...
It's a false flag!
Yeah. I mean, there's so many areas of emptiness within the historical record concerning Jesus, and concerning exactly what happened. That, I mean, because as I said, there are no eyewitnesses accounts of Christ's ministry except the 4 Gospels, but those were written up to 50 years after he died. These were not contemporary accounts. There are no contemporary historical documents at all. And as I said, we'll hit on that a little bit towards the end, but I mean, Paul even admits that his conversion experience was a vision. I mean, 3 different times in Acts he talks about it. And all 3 accounts are slightly different. And they're slightly different because the 3 audiences he spoke to were different. And it's just like you see with any speaker today, and I don't mean just religious speakers, but any speakers. they will tailor their speech to the audience. At least I would hope so. Or you could do the exact opposite, like our fearless leader, who doesn't really give a shit who the audience is and just says really stupid shit, like you're gonna lose all your money because you Jews don't vote for me, or some stupid shit. Anyways, sorry. But what I find really weird about this whole thing with the Pauline vision, as there are some apologists who take his vision, what he says is a vision, and consider it eyewitness testimony. And I'm like, okay, he says it's a vision. He says he never met the dude. But you're saying it's an eyewitness account. Okay. And one I found off the top of my head was from Cold Case Christianity, which is, Jim Wallace? No, that's not right. One of the bigger apologetic names. But it's like, dude, no, it's a vision. So, and again, another point Frame brings up is, it's, again, ignoring the authorship issue, is that the first New Testament gospel that was written was Mark, and that is believed to be about 65 to 80 BCE. And then Matthew and then Luke around 80 to 100 CE. And then John was the last one, written between 90 to 120 CE. So, okay, from 2,000 years, we've gone down to, we'll say 1900. My math is probably really sucky, so excuse me.
Close enough.
And then you get the whole, I mean, just as a side note, there's the whole issue of the two-source hypothesis, or Q.
Oh God, QAnon.
No, not QAnon. Totally different. But yeah, I mean,
not the Q from Star Trek?
No, not Q from Star Trek either. Rest in peace, Renee.
Oh.
But yeah, I can tell I'm getting old when my idols from 20 years ago are starting to croak.
See, here's the thing that I was taught about Matthew and Mark, though, is I was taught that they were disciples.
And that's the thing, and that's a big misnomer. Nobody knows who wrote any of the four Gospels. They are all anonymous.
Ah.
They were assigned Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, based on, it's kind of a convoluted, they were considered to be disciples of Jesus, and I can't remember the exact theory about it, but basically, no, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John did not write the Gospels.
Okay.
They are anonymous.
That's what it was considered. It's like, oh, the Gospel of Matthew, so this is Matthew telling you it from his perspective, and this is the Gospel of Luke, and I think I was also taught that Luke was a doctor, so...
Yeah.
So... It was, so I always had assumed that, oh, this is, or at least somebody saying he's Matthew, the disciple, writing this. But yeah, I had no idea that they were randomly.
No, they were
randomly, but like they were,
they were literally, they were attributed, just like we attributed the first 5 books of the Torah to Moses, which basically generally now is not what is believed.
Yeah, because it refers to Moses' death, and he can't write about his own death.
Well, and also the video I was watching today from Vice Rhino, which I referenced later, was talking about in one of the passages, Moses was talking about how humble he is, but yet he's writing about how humble he is. So
you won't believe how humble I am.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you're not very humble if you're writing about it. being the simplistic point he was trying to make. But it's like, yeah, I wish now I would have dug into the whole authorship issue, because I didn't realize you didn't know that, Morgan. Which makes, some people might not be, but if you were to do a Google search, or in my case, DuckDuckGo or Go. I use the other one, the one that doesn't track you. Not that I care. Um, if you were to Google authorship of the four Gospels, the whole discussion would come up. So, homework
Yeah.
assignment for y'all if you don't understand the authorship of the four Gospels.
I mean, I do, but I was
Yeah.
taught the same thing.
Well, so
Morgan
was I, and
Yeah.
it was actually in school, in college, when I learned that no, that's not true, because, and that's the thing, that's one of the divides between theology and, or textual criticisms, theology, and preaching, is that what you preach is not necessarily theologically sound.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it just, there's a great divide there between what's true and what we're taught in the pulpit or even in Sunday school. I happen to be lucky is that, like, the pastors of the churches I went to were pretty much true to the scholarship of the time. So if he would say, we don't really know who wrote these, but I have heard preachers say, well, they believe Mark wrote Mark, and that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and that brings us to a point that, I call point 4. And it carries over from, our last point, is that, what's the big deal? So we have a 1,950-year-old book instead of a 2,000-year-old book. Well, while the Gospels were only 35 to 90 years after the death of Jesus, the actual oldest surviving copies of these texts only date to the mid-2nd century. And in fact, the oldest scrap of known Christian writing that has been recovered to date is a fragment of the Gospel of John, and that dates to about 125 CE. And it's literally the size of a credit card. And this gets into the whole, I know we probably, we've all probably seen the meme where, King James is a copy of copies of copies of copies.
Mm-hmm.
That's where this is coming from. We don't have any extant copies of the Bible. We do not have the original. We do not have the original manuscripts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the Pauline epistles, etc., etc. We have none of that. We have copies of copies of copies.
Mm-hmm.
And these copies, and I know this is pretty basic for a lot of people, are handwritten copies. These are not the Gutenberg press copies. So these are written by scribes who, in a majority of cases, were illiterate themselves, but they were good at copying. They were good at making the little Hebrew, or, well, in this case, Greek. So yeah, we don't have the originals. And this goes back to kind of a point we made in our episode concerning the Dead Sea fragments and the whole debacle with the Museum of the Bible. Or maybe a little bit more on point is the hubbub surrounding the, quote, 1st century Mark manuscript. There was a manuscript of Mark that was dated to the 1st century, and it was touted as being the earliest copy. It wasn't, claimed to be an original, but a copy, one of the earliest, and it turns out it's 2nd or possibly 3rd century. So, yeah, we don't have original copies of the Bible. We just have fragments of various manuscripts of various ages. And carrying on from that, as I said, we have no extant originals. And he goes on to discuss like the different variants, which include spelling mistakes, overlooked words, sometimes whole passages. There were creative additions. Whether they be theologically inclined editing or just, oh, I think it should be this, just because. So there are numerous amounts of variants. Now, some of them, from a theological standpoint or from a doctrinal standpoint, don't affect the text. Some do. I think if all variants are noted, then it becomes kind of irrelevant, but this is what happens. As much as I hate to use the old worn out analogy of the telephone game, this is basically what's happening in written form. And the video that I was watching from Vice Rhino, he was doing it's part one of examining biblical contradictions with AIG. They just recently put out a book edited by Ken Ham, of all people. Surprise, surprise there.
The best editor of our generation.
Yeah. Well, it's actually, if you guys get a chance to listen to this video, he makes a really valid point, and this is kind of a sidetrack, but Bodhi Hodge, who is his son-in-law, writes this one piece. I can't remember the exact topic of it. And of course, Ham being the editor approved it, but it's actually not nice. Just how, if I remember correctly, how Vice Rhino explained it was quite anti-Semitic, but that doesn't surprise me either. But yeah, if you get a chance, do give it a look. I'll link it in the description after the show. But 2 points that Vice Rhino brought out as far as surviving copies and stuff like that is that in Mark 8:33, it's the rebuke of Peter by Jesus. He in AIG's description, they say one thing, and when Vice Rhino rips it apart, it comes down to a problem. Well, AIG said, well, it's a problem in translation coupled with an increased mythology surrounding Satan. That's around the 11-minute mark. And then another, when it comes to translational errors, is a bat a bird? And what it drives home is this point of biblical inerrancy. If the Bible wasn't inerrant, then by proxy the translation should be.
Yeah, I hear some people say that doesn't really matter as much because it's, people would have considered a bat a bird then, but
it's a translational. What it is, it comes down to how you translate the word for bat and bird, and it is kind of a pedantic point in a sense that it's a either or situation. But you would think that if the Bible was inerrant, infallible, that an omniscient God would know to use a word that would be a little bit more clear. I know it's a simplistic point, but it goes to the notion that did this translational error arise because of scribes copying things wrong? It's basically because we have copies of copies of copies, they're filled with errors, and they're separated by time from the originals. We don't even know what the original verses intended. And
Yeah, and that was the thing that we were actually taught at French camp was about, how do we know the Bible's true? And then and we were taught basically that, oh, well, they copied it correctly over and over and over again, and, this whole process that scribes had and everything like that. So we were basically taught, oh, there are no errors
Mhm.
in
And
translation.
that if it was
It's made
divinely
by.
inspired, that God would make sure that it was handed down without error.
yeah,
Yeah, but we were
now
also taught that there were absolutely no errors because of a process of when you copied these down. But obviously, yeah, no.
there's actually a video on YouTube. Yes, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, but I don't have TV. But it was actually a legitimate documentary and not a TV documentary type bullshit. It was, from what I could tell, anyways, scholarly sound, and they actually showed a rabbi who was a scribe who had recently, I think this was 2014ish, was when it was originally published. He was commissioned to copy the Torah because the one that the synagogue or temple um, had was getting old and worn out. And there's a specific process that Judaism goes through to retire a Torah. And that's why they become available to people like the Museum of the Bible. But he was commissioned to scribe the Torah, and they actually have a ritual, for lack of a better word, that they go through before they even put pen to paper. And if I remember correctly, every letter they have to go through a mini ritual. And it's basically, if I remember correctly, it's basically to guarantee that they copy it correctly. In that gist. But it was actually an interesting doc. I wish I could remember what it was called. But yeah, there's a whole process, especially within Judaism, that, when they copy the Torah, there's a whole process they go through to do it. It's not just, oh, I'm going to copy it and, a year later they're done. Most of the time it takes about 3 years, if I remember the timeline, for an entire Torah to be scribed. So it's
Wow.
not an overnight process.
Yeah.
And most Torahs are not mass produced. When they're the ones used in the temple or synagogues, I can't remember the order of hierarchy. They are handwritten. They are hand scribed. They are not, printing press. So, but yeah, he goes on, point 5 and 6 kind of interrelate. So now we have an 1865-year-old book instead of a 2000. And he goes, no, not quite. Although the writings were produced early on, then copied for years, they were not actually originally meant to be distributed as a set of canonical scripture. Indeed, in the New Testament is comprised of 27 books written by about 16 authors who had intended to address specific audiences at specific times, rather than create a collection that would serve as some timeless how-to guide. So basically, when the Gospels and when the Pauline letters were written, they were just letters. They weren't intending it to become the Bible as we know it. So, and as we alluded to in the beginning, when did the Bible become the Bible? When was the canon set? And there's a lot of discussion, a lot of it centering around Constantine and the Council of Nicaea. We're not going to go there. That's a whole discussion. Whole discussion in itself. But I will throw this little side note out. I mean, I've heard people say, "Oh, it was Constantine that set the Bible and the Council of Nicaea," but and this is an area I have meant to really dig into to try to settle it in my own mind, not just because XYZ says it's so. But when Acharya S died, DM Murdoch, those, from the Zyka movie, who's been a guest on Beyond the Trailer Park a couple times, and I've had her on other platforms as well. So I knew Acharya for about 10 years prior to her death. And it kind of really shook me to the core, not because, I think, she was the be all end all of mysticism, but I did appreciate her work. And there were a lot of things I did not agree with her with, and she knew it. I mean, we had discussions about, various things, but I kind of lost my interest after she died, and then, of course, I had my strokes, and then all hell kind of broke loose. So I haven't really gotten back to it. And, so we'll kind of avoid that because there's that's a whole discussion in itself, what was Constantine's influence, the influence of the Council of Nicaea. Was the Council of Nicaea even relevant to this discussion? So we might explore that sometime in the future. I just haven't figured out yet how we're going to go about it. But basically what he's saying is that the bulk of the texts that we know is New Testament really were not set until 2nd, maybe early 3rd century. Some people say even later, like 450. So we don't know for sure. Well, at least, let me say, I don't know for sure what the date actually is, but it's somewhere between the 2nd and 4th centuries. But there was still debate over Revelation. Was it, supposed to be part of the canon? And it's like, these books were never meant to be written as a book, or a collection of books in this case. So we don't know. We don't have a complete book that sets the canon, so to speak. And the only completed New Testament manuscript we have is from the mid-4th century, and that's the Codex Sinaiticus. And that's 300 years after the death of Jesus and when the original Gospels were written. So now we're down to a 1665-year-old book, give or take a few years. But then again, the Codex Sinaiticus doesn't represent the final version either. Now this we can be a little pedantic with because, we have 5,700 surviving manuscripts of the New Testament. And they range in date or size from the credit card size fragment of John to entire copies of the New Testament. Some of these are like from the Middle Ages, like 90% are from the Middle Ages. As we were discussing earlier, and I can't remember if we were on air yet, but we may have been, I don't know. It's such a blur. I could see the argument where we don't have a completed Bible until the King James 1611.
Yeah.
Now, or if you want to be even more pedantic, the Bible's still undergoing revision as we speak. You have the NIV, you have the RSV, you have the
The Message.
Yeah, I mean, you have all these variants that are still being produced today. What was the recent one that came out? Was it last year or the year before? Might be in a longer.
There's even a revised King James version.
Yeah, New
King James.
It's like, where can we definitively state we have the final version of the Bible, or a final version of the Bible, when we're
Now, there are some Christians that think that King James is the end all be all.
Yes, and that's where
Because
yeah.
there's a pastor that I heard say, "Oh well, this is the seventh translation of the Bible, so therefore seven's a perfect number, so the King James is perfect." And I wanted to be like, "So is the seventh Spanish version also as like what?"
Yeah, a lot of my early debates or discussions, debates, however you want to term it, were with King James only people, and
Yeah.
I remember
Which
one.
it's not in the original, and that's their whole thing. They're like, "Oh, well, this is the original." I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, it's not in the
No.
original
Well,
language. It's in English."
the thing is, what it did, and this was years ago, so we're going back. Oh God, at least 15 years. I got so pissed off at this one conversation when they said the King James Bible was the original translation. I'm like, so I went and did a bunch of searching, and I actually have a pamphlet book started, never finished, basically on the history of biblical translation, specifically into English. And it actually goes back to, you have the Latin Vulgate, which is the first Latin translation and the first translation period, outside of the Greek and Hebrew. And then it's Old English. And basically it comes down to that, no, the King James Version Bible is not the original. Actually, it steals from Tyndale. Basically, they just rewrote Tyndale's work and, edited in and edited out a few things. And it's just like, so I went back into the discussion after finding it and said, no, King James Version is not the first English translation of the Bible. It's like the fourth. And I said, and if you want to get even older, the first English translation dates back to like 1100. It's like, no, King James, and that's the problem with King James only. They reject all other versions of the Bible. Most of them reject even going to the original Greek or Hebrew. They consider that corrupt. It's like, no, God didn't dictate in English. In fact, we have no fucking clue what God dictated if we give the caveat that God existed. I mean, you hear some talk about the Adamic languages, which are supposedly different from the Hebrew language for the Old Testament. And then, okay, where does Proto-Hebrew fit in? It's really wild, some of the apologetics the King James only people use. I mean, and most of them say they don't use the Greek or Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
When you dig into why they don't, it comes down to the fact they never learned Greek or Hebrew. So it's foreign to them. And
Therefore, if I just say it's invalid,
yeah. Basically,
then
it
I don't
comes
have
down
to like.
they're too fucking lazy to learn. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. I mean,
Or
Steve.
even to learn just the differences. Like, you
Yeah.
don't even have to learn the entire language, but just like,
Mm-hmm.
learn some basic, you know, like, oh, this is how this is different, or hey, this Greek word, in context, it means, closer to this, and this isn't, the best way to put it in English, or this is there's not really an English equivalent. Like, at least educate yourself on it, but no, that would require learning.
Well,
And that's
I
bad.
know.
Learning is hard.
Yeah.
It's a conspiracy.
Yes. Well, to some it is. Government mandated schools, but I just find it's funny because one of the King James only people that I've dealt with is Jim Wilhelmsman, and he's, while a religious zealot, he's also kind of extraordinary. He's in the whole Nephilim bullshit. And
One of those.
he goes so far, he's one of the proponents that will go so far as say that the Pauline epistles are all written to counteract the Nephilim. Okay, so he believes the entire New Testament and Christ's coming was to thwart the Nephilim. It gets more convoluted than that, but he actually refuses to learn Greek and Hebrew, but yet, and he's anti-Catholic, and I mean,
Of course.
really anti-Catholic.
Of course.
So he's into this whole chapter, verse, numerology, prophecy bullshit. So, like, chapter 33, verse 3, the numbers
Oh my
mean something.
god.
The problem,
Oh yeah, the numerology thing.
yeah, what's bizarre is a lot of people, and I actually pointed this out to him. I said, so you're anti-Catholic, but you're using a Catholic method of chapter and verse because it was devised by two Catholic monks. Because the original Greek and Hebrew did not have chapter and verses. It was just basically one long run-on text. You didn't know where one paragraph started and another ended. It basically was, based on study, they were able to devise this system. And it's a purely Catholic, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, a purely Catholic invention. But yet he's very anti-Catholic. And I pointed this out to him, and he's like, that's not true. I mean, he totally refused to look into it. I was like, dude, you're using a number system for the Bible that was created by Catholics who you fucking can't stand. You think they're pagan idol worshippers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, so King James only people, I mean, there are some that are, they just like the King James only because of the language. But you have some really hardcore ones that are, well, Steven Anderson.
He's a
Although he does know at least some Greek and Hebrew. I don't think very much.
I can't stand that.
Oh,
Man.
the whole new IFB is really bizarre. I've been kind of watching, and they've been sort of quiet, but they still come out with some doozies every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, basically what Frame concludes, in a sense, is that at the very least, if we, it's a 1600-year-old book referring to the mid 14th century when the complete canon was officially adopted. We'll say, allegedly officially adopted. I think he's referring to the King James. If they have a look of puzzlement on their face, this is a great opportunity to share with them the long and dubious process by which their divinely inspired text was created. So basically, when you're in a discussion conceding the point that it's a 2,000-year-old book, you're missing the opportunity to educate. Now, as I said way back in the beginning, depending on the mindset of the person you're talking to, it may or may not make a difference. Being that I don't debate in a live situation because I have a temper, I don't take too kindly to stupidity, whether it be willful or just ignorance. So I pretty much stick to online stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think fast enough on my feet. I have to, literally script everything out so I know what I'm saying. I do have kind of a database that I can go back to and pull out, if I've had this discussion before, I can pull out an argument I used or whatever, or factoid or whatever. So for me, like if I go into, as Deb and I used to call them, the crazy groups, which I still peruse, but I don't say as much as I did because I don't have my backup anymore. Because Deb and I would tag team, so we'd have some fun conversations, but I know some, not everybody in those groups are nut jobs. A good majority are. Even some of the atheists in those groups are kind of weird, but that's just my opinion. So I will stick to that kind of venue for me because I can take that stuff back if I need to and not get so frustrated I want to put my fist through my monitor, and I have done that before. Hence why I have a spare one in the back. Um, so I kind of think of my audience who I don't give a shit about who I'm debating. And this goes to like when I'm debating anti-vax stuff or GMO stuff. I don't think about who I'm talking to. I think about the audience that may be reading what I write that might be on the fence about something or isn't sure. And that's why I do have a tendency to like overcitate. I mean, if you've ever read any of my longer blog posts, I will have citations of the yin yang. And I do that for two reasons. You know, somebody can go and look at where I'm getting this information from. They can, you know, and that's just the way I've always done things. You know, I mean, yeah, okay, I might, for example, like in the current topic I'm working on with the pseudo nurse, I use Science Based Medicine, the website, as a primary source. Part of the reason being that if you read that source, you're going to find numerous other links, generally to the actual study in question, and their review or their criticism of whatever. If it's dealing with pseudoscience, it's not going to be very nice, especially if Gorski writes it. But I love Gorski's writing. And he's very, I mean, and they all, like, are the same way. They will cite source after source, and not just secondary sources. They will cite the primary sources. So I want to put that information out there. So if somebody is reading it that isn't sure, oh, okay, I'll go check what this link has to say. Oh, okay, this link is quoting here. Let's see what this person, you know. So to give them kind of a way to get to the information themselves, make their own decision. You know, granted, in a lot of cases, especially when dealing with somebody that has a set mind, you're not going to change their minds. But on the offhand that you might influence one or two people in the what I consider proper direction, you know, especially with anti-vax, I'm all for it. But I find in, like, if I were to actually do, like, a, quote, live debate online or something, I wouldn't be able to do it because I don't think fast enough. It's just, you know, I mean, even for shows like this, I literally, you know, I send it to both of you. I have a, quote, outline, because if I don't, we're going to end up all over the place, and half the time I don't follow the outline anyways. But what do you guys think? Do you think we should continue saying 2,000-year-old book, or as, you know, Frame says, maybe, you know, we should call that back a little bit?
I can see, like, the places where I've seen it thrown out there, are just when people are saying, like, oh, this is why, I believe that the government should be this or that. And people will be like, I don't care what your 2,000-year-old book says. Just kind of more of a colloquialism is generally how I hear that used.
Do you think that could be watering down the whole notion?
Yeah, because I guess it does. I can see how it does because makes it does seem like, oh, the whole book was written all at one time and it was written while these events were happening and things like that, which obviously isn't true. But yeah, I don't know, because it's hard to do kind of a shorthand for that. It's kind of hard to fit,
Yeah.
It doesn't really fit on the bumper sticker, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the messaging isn't as, like,
Well,
they're trying to make a point regarding that. Now, if you're actually having a debate about, is the Bible true, and you're going into these texts and these textual, looking at these textual arguments, then yeah, I would say that, definitely, have your dates more updated and more correct in that context. But I'm just thinking of a colloquial sense. I'm not sure of that.
Well, I think you made a really good point. Bumper sticker.
Yeah.
If we can't sum it up to fit on a bumper sticker or in a meme.
Where it matters, because it's like there's some places where messaging matters more. So if somebody were like, to say, oh, well, I don't believe that in abortion because I'm a Christian, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, well, your 1600 to 1400-year-old book, depending on the variables, I'm going to be like, I don't care what your 2000-year-old book says.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's, like, I know when I'm in discussions, depending on what the discussion is, where it seems to be heading, and stuff like I have to take those. Yeah, I have to take those variables into consideration, because a lot of times, I will play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Just because people don't think of that. And I've actually done that and had people come back and say, you actually believe? I'm like, seriously, you're asking me that question? So it gets lost in the translation, so to speak, because, I hate texting. I hate, even to some degree, like, written, like, Facebook type things where you can't. I'm very verbose. And I will beat a point to its death, or the opposite, but you can't do that in something like a meme. You can't do that on Facebook. Well, you can on Facebook, but after the first paragraph, you're going to lose your readers, unless they're, specifically signed up to read something like that. Like, I have the I Science to You as a page for myself, and basically it's all dealing with science or science related, or, well, in some cases conspiracies. I put that in there as well, or fake news, and just, how their mindset. But most of the people that are signed up for it are of the same mindset and are interested in that. But my general friends on Facebook could give two shits. Okay, there's a few caveats in there, obviously, but yeah, it all depends on the venue. I think, I think we have to keep in mind that flippantly saying, and I think this is where Frame is going, is that flippantly saying, oh, it's a 2,000-year book, we're giving away way too much.
Yeah, I can see that. You could just leave off the 2000 part, I guess, if you're trying to make that point. But if you're just trying to say, I don't care what your book says, but again, it's like just trying to say how outdated it is. But yeah, I think it depends on the context of a conversation.
Yeah. Renee, what do you think? Brigitte? Bridget!
Did we lose her?
I don't know. No, she's still showing up. I think we may have. Yep.
I'm here.
Oh, okay, what do you think?
I've been trying to say, I would not get into all that at all unless it was someone who was saying, trying to prove the authenticity of the Bible, and then I would go into all that.
Yeah.
Because to show them why it's not authentic.
Yeah. Well, and
just somebody just coming up trying to say, well, Jesus loves you. Have you read the Bible? I wouldn't get into all that.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah, kind of. Well, I think it goes back to a point we made back in our Dead Sea Scroll episode concerning the Museum of the Bible, is that just because, and again, this is an argument that I've heard from atheists, not all atheists, but some atheists, that, oh, Dead Sea Scrolls are fake. No. Anything after 2002 that are in possession of the Museum of the Bible and a few other venues are being questioned. That doesn't mean the entire Dead Sea Scroll is fake. Or when Christians say, well, the Dead Sea Scrolls or archaeology proves the Bible, it's like, no, it proves that this specific place existed, or this specific person existed. Is that your Roomba?
What?
It sounds like a Roomba. Is that you? No.
Oh, no,
That's not mine.
Oh.
No, that's my dog.
Oh, that's your dog. Okay. I
Yeah,
was like,
he's running
what the
around
hell?
causing havoc.
Oh, that's okay. He can run around combat. I actually thought Z was going to pop up tonight, but no, he's laying on his table being a fat ass. But yeah, it goes to, it all depends on context. I mean, yeah, we can argue big Bible archaeology till we're blue in the face. Yeah, it proves XYZ may have existed, but it doesn't prove the Bible. Same thing with this. Yeah, technically the book isn't 2,000 years old, but depending on the context of the conversation, you know, it depends on how far you want to delve into it. What I thought was funny was today I was just scrolling through my news feed and an article popped up that originally appeared on Alternet, and then Smirking Chimp republished it from Valerie Terrico, who generally I accept a lot of her writing as legitimate, but and I haven't like vetted the entire article, but going back to a point that I made earlier, she talks about that no first century secular evidence whatsoever exists to support the actuality of Yeshua I can really talk. Yeshua ben Yosef, i.e. Jesus, the James Ossuary. So she quoted, and I was actually looking for this quote because I have it somewhere in my mess of files here, but I couldn't find it. And wouldn't you know, she quotes him from Bart Ehrman, who basically, and this has been a popular meme, or variations of have been a popular meme, where he goes, and this is quoting from his book, which one is it? I can't remember. I don't know if I have it. I didn't write down the name of the book. But he basically says that what sort of things do pagan authors from the time of Jesus have to say about him? Nothing. As odd as it may seem, there is no mention of Jesus at all by any of his pagan contemporaries. There are no birth records, no trial transcripts, no death certificates. There are no expressions of interest, no heated slanders, no passing references, nothing. In fact, if we broaden our field of concern to the years after his death, even if we include the entire first century of the Common Era, there is not so much as a solitary reference to Jesus in any non-Christian, non-Jewish source of any kind. I should
Now, I thought Josephus had mentioned him.
The passages that refer specifically to Christ have been generally accepted now as forgeries.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, basically the language that is used in those two specific passages that reference Christ or Jesus, I'm not actually sure of the passages what reference they use, are written in a totally different language that would not be historically attributed to a Jew referring to Christ. They are out of context, so they make no sense. So most scholars today consider those two passages forgeries.
See, the conversation about did Jesus really exist or not, I guess it just hasn't really interested me that much, because at the end of the day, I guess to me it doesn't matter.
Well, this is how I look at it for me. I mean, for a while, whether Jesus existed or not was kind of, we'll say, important. Now it's more of an intellectual pursuit. You know, I like to have things settled in my mind just because I'm weird like that. But for me, it comes down to this. Regardless of whether what is written in the Bible is true or not, okay, whether Christ existed, whether God created Adam and Eve, I don't really care, okay, because see, I wouldn't worship God if he was proven to be true for the simple fact he's a fucking narcissist. He's an egomaniac who kills people wantonly just because he's jealous or pissed off. I mean, he wiped out the entirety of humanity but 8 people because he was pissed off at what he created. You know, and if you take it a step further, he created Satan. Okay.
Yeah.
And just like the fact that there was a recent meme, and it's been going around a while, I said, if the Roadrunner, or the coyote caught the Roadrunner, that would be the end of the cartoon. If, oh, I always get the characters. If, in Tom and Jerry, Tom is the mouse,
Tom
right?
is a cat.
Oh, Tom is the, so if Tom caught Jerry, that would be the end of the cartoon. So if,
ate Tweety.
yeah, that would be the end of it. So if God destroyed Satan, that'd be the end of it. So yeah, there's just no, for me to accept that God exists, it's not even a matter of whether he exists or not. It's more a matter of, does he deserve my worship? And the answer is fuck no. And, you know, I'm sorry, when you wantonly kill people, commit genocide, allow
and other people to commit genocide.
Yeah.
And
I mean, ultimately, it comes down to he's committing the genocide. He's just using these tools. I mean, I can't worship somebody like that. I'm sorry.
Bible God is a dick.
Well, and then you got the idea that the God of the Old Testament, if you read, you know, the entirety of the Old Testament, yada yada, compared to the God of the New Testament, and it's 2 different dudes. He's more bipolar than I am. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't even, I mean, for me, it doesn't really matter if Christ exists. It doesn't matter if the Bible's true or not. I wouldn't worship God anyways because he's a fucking dick. That's what it boils down to. So, I mean, for me, it's more of an intellectual pursuit. You know, just to, I guess, you know, okay, am I right to even hold that opinion? You know, I mean, some people are okay are okay with worshiping some dude that wantonly kills people just because he's fucking pissed off, and I just find that gross.
Well, I think that if I had to compare, Old Testament God to anything, I would compare it to like, one of the volcano gods,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it was.
I actually have seen references to that very point. I wish I would have. There was one. In fact, I saw it a couple days ago.
I saw smoke during the daytime and a pillar of fire at night. That sounds like a volcano.
Yeah, I've actually. In fact, it was just this past week. I've heard that reference to volcano god as far as the God of the Bible. Kind of interesting you brought that up. It's just something I saw in passing. I didn't click on it, but. I mean, I think part of it for me, too, is that I'm kind of looking back at some of my old reasonings, so to speak, or what got me to leave religion. I mean, there's a multitude of reasons, but it basically boils down to is I could not accept worship of a deity that committed the atrocities that God did. And that's what it ultimately boils down to me. It doesn't matter whether he exists or not. That's just here nor there. It doesn't matter whether Christ existed or not. There's no proof that he was divine. None. Just because 4 books in the Bible says he claimed to be, and these so-called events supposedly happened, even though none were there to witness it, kind of solidifies that, okay, yeah, no, maybe. But I've been kind of looking back at different, like Pascal's wager. Am I right to discount that? Am I right to, as far as, is the whole Jesus mythicist position, even though I don't specifically hold that position, I'm kind of in between, is it right to hold that position? So I've been kind of re-examining some things, and that's when this article popped up about, well, it was about a month ago. It's been a while since we did a show. And it just got me to thinking: is are we flippantly saying that, or does context matter in how we say it? Like we've been discussing, but I think Bart really pins it down. There is no contemporary history of Christ. There's nothing. There's nothing from historians of that time period. There's no private letters that survived other than what's in the Bible, and plus some of the extra biblical texts. So yeah, he goes. How does he put it? I should stress. Where'd it go? Why am I okay? I have a blurb over the. I lost my spot. Oh yeah, there it is. I should stress that we do have a large number of documents from the time, the writings of poets, philosophers, historians, scientists, and government officials, for example, not to mention the large collection of surviving inscriptions on stone and private letters and legal documents and papyrus. In none of this vast array of surviving writings is Jesus' name ever so much as mentioned.
Sure.
I mean, we have all this contemporary writing, but Christ isn't mentioned in any of it. Not until later. So, for me, that kind of, solidifies the point. And I'm not saying Bart Ehrman's to be all end all, but there are other scholars that have basically stated the same thing. He just kind of solidifies it because he's the one I'm most familiar with it. And popped into my head at the time when I was writing this up.
Yeah.
So what do y'all think?
Yeah, I'm kind of where it was at before. Just the whole, I think it depends on the context of the conversation. And again, it's just the whole, I don't know, I just can't really get into the whole, or invested into the whole did Jesus exist thing. I don't know.
Well, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it can be if you're real flippant about it, but I know you. I mean, I know. Well, I think I have an understanding of how you think. So it's not like you're just, I don't give a shit, like that type of.
Yeah.
It's
not
more
that. It's
like.
just that's not an argument that I've just I don't know. I find it interesting, but I'm not invested either way, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think what it comes down to, like, for me, I'm into the whole theocracy bullshit. You're more into the social issues, coming from an atheist perspective.
Yeah.
Renee, you're kind of a mix.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it all depends on our own personal viewpoint of how we approach something like this. And I just thought it was kind of an interesting article because it's like, yeah, I say that. Maybe I shouldn't. But as I said in the beginning, there is a caveat I have to give away that, I'm accepting for the sake of discussion that Christ existed. But, yeah, I just.
I'm not willing to. I think it's an amalgamation. And, I've heard the argument before that, was Jesus, he was either, a liar, or a lunatic, or Lord. And I'm like, how about the fourth one? Legend?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it all is, as Morgan said, it depends on context. It depends on who I'm talking with. What's the venue? Like, if I'm in the crazy group, I'm probably not going to grant that caveat that Christ existed just because I'm an asshole. And I'm not going to give them that satisfaction just because, like, they're idiots. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful, but some of those people are either really, really good pose, are really, really, really super ignorant and uneducated, or they're idiots. It's like kind of a version of liar, lunatic, or lord. But yeah, it's hard to tell in those groups when you're actually in a serious discussion, so you kind of gotta
Mm-hmm.
You know, for some reason, it's funny. Deb and I used to compare this. I never, very rare, do I get like heated discussions on my wall, which is fine. I'm
Yeah, I
not
don't.
invite.
I prefer
I'm
not
not.
to.
I'm not inviting that. But she would get some really wackadoodle um, discussions
Oh, yes, she would. Yes, she would.
going on her wall, and it's like, how do these people even?
Mm-hmm.
And what it is the people, a lot of them from the crazy groups, would track down her, her profile,
Mhm.
and then friend her. And Deb wasn't very discerning. She basically friended everybody, which in her, you know, that was just the way she operated. She didn't block or ban anybody, whereas I will if conversations go in a direction, or if I've actually deleted like 4 people in the last month because they posted shit on their wall that made it in my feed that is like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah.
It's like, and you didn't think I'd see that? And a lot of one of it was dealing with uh, trans issues, specifically the bathroom bill. And he basically, out of nowhere, was like, he was commenting on a recent case, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, that happened in, I think, Colorado, where a girl won the right to use the girl's bathroom. And she's like, this isn't right. This person was saying, this isn't right. This is going too far. I'm thinking, bye. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
but yet you claim to be an ally. And I use that term kind of loosely. But it's
Mhm.
like, I won't tolerate that. And I tell people, like when they send me friends requests, I say, first of all, my page is completely public because of Beyond the Trailer Park and my blog. I don't hide. I use my real name, etc., etc. So anything you post on my wall will be public, or any comment you post on my wall will be public unless you specifically ask me to remove it. I may or may not, depending on your reasoning.
In your
Um,
mood.
in my mood, yeah. And I tell that people straight up. I said, so, and I said, I'm also, if they don't know me that well, I'm in a lot of groups that, well, specifically anti-Jillian groups, and now soon to be new love interest, uh, not literal love interest, but so I'm connected with people that you know want to quote become friends. But I tell them, hey, I'm an atheist, I'm gay, I'm pretty outspoken, and I don't tolerate any type of hate speech or speech that's hateful. So you say one wrong move, you're gone. No questions asked. So like if you post something that, even though you're trying to be neutral, like in the bathroom bill issue, I'm gonna boot your ass. It's like I don't tolerate it. It's like, so in a way I'm glad I don't have to deal with that, because it's like I'd probably be really busy. But
I
so
generally don't have fighting on my Facebook wall at all. I'll delete the stuff because I don't
yeah.
need the drama.
Well, yeah, and it's
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, what does it
Yeah.
solve? I mean, yeah, there are issues we need to bring to light, and there are issues that do need to be discussed, but they need to be discussed in I don't know if rational is the right word, a rational manner, a respectful manner.
Yeah.
While you may disagree with something, that's fine. You can disagree with it, but don't post hate. Don't, you know, yeah, hate speech I don't go for.
I don't go for that, but I don't go for people attacking other people on my
Well,
wall
yeah,
just
that I don't tolerate at
because.
all. Yeah, just because.
I
Well,
don't, because my wall, my rules. Be nice. Play nice.
yeah, like,
I might give you a warning. I might pop out the drama llama, meme. But after that, if you keep on, you're gone.
yeah. Well, I know I have a couple friends, that are Facebook friends that I know are, um, they are Christian, and they don't I'm not sure how to, I won't say accept, but they don't believe that homosexuality is proper. That's fine. You can believe whatever you want. Don't, shove it down my face. Don't shove it down other people on my wall who may comment, positively towards homosexuality. Just because your religion states XYZ doesn't mean that I or anybody else on my wall has to follow that. Your religion ends where my nose begins. Or some shit like that. I forgot how the phrasing goes, but yeah. I just find it funny that that those that are able to handle that kind of, as you call it, drama on their walls, how they do it, because I have no toleration for it.
I don't either. I don't want to read a bunch of shit posting on my wall. I wouldn't do that to somebody. I wouldn't come in somebody else's house or their living room and start tearing up the furniture.
Well, I've even
And most of the friends that I've had for many, many years. I'd like to keep them and not have them run off because somebody else is being a dick.
Yeah. Well, I've actually gotten into conversation on other people's walls, and I realize I'm kind of doing, going into a house, destroying their furniture. I'll be like, I may have overstepped my bounds. Do you want me to stop? And most of them are like, no, keep going. But yeah, I mean, I don't go.
I gotta be respectful.
Yeah, I don't go on to other people's walls, and unless they specifically tag me or they specifically target. But I'm not going to go on their wall. But if they post something on my wall that specifically targets me or something I support, yeah, I'm going to say something. But if it's on your wall, I could give two shits what you post.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a private citizen. Now, if you're a public figure like Marianne Williamson, that's different. Because I've actually posted responses to her Facebook post, especially her recent one. It's like she repeated the two biggest anti-vaccine tropes there are. It's like, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. But yeah.
My wall is not public, and the biggest problem that I run into sometimes is like some of the coworkers, if something bad happens, they're like, well, I'll pray for you. And they mean well by that. I don't think the prayers do any good. Might as well send farts up,
Yeah. But I'm not going to sit there.
But other people will come in and say, well, your prayers are not wanted here or won't do any good. And then I'll delete that stuff because it's like, don't attack these people. I mean, they're trying to wish me well.
Well, it's just like the meme that's going around, and it's gone around for years, where it says, wish me Merry Christmas, wish me Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and they list a bunch of other religions. And it's like, just be nice to me. It's like, well, my father, perfect example. Okay, both my parents were as fundamentalists. I mean, I'm as close to a PK as you can be without actually being a PK, preacher's kid. For those that don't know what it means, my parents were very active in their church. They both were president of the church multiple times. Both have been treasurer. Both, my dad was a lay minister. Well, not really lay minister. What's the word I'm looking for? He was an elder, so, he did some of the readings in church, obviously not the preaching, that was left to the preacher man, and my mom did as well. So, and even now, I mean, I've never actually come out to my parents. My mom is passed now, but I never came out to them as being gay, and I never came out to them as being an atheist. Case in point being, as far as being gay, if after 44 years they hadn't figured it out, they were never going to figure it out. So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to upset the apple cart. And I was pretty sure my cousin outed me anyways. So, but it was just basically something that was never discussed in my family from any part of my family. In fact, only 2 cousins know for sure that I am gay because I told them. Same thing with my atheism. One, it happened over such a long period of time, over 10 years, by that point, I wasn't even talking to my parents. I didn't start talking to my parents. I mean, I went 10 years and then when my mom died, it was going on another 7 years. We had like 5 years where we talked, and then we slipped into another period, and it was going on 7 years when mom got sick, and she eventually passed away. So my dad and I talk about every 2 weeks, and my dad always, especially after my stroke, was like, "Oh, I'll pray for you." Well, he's 91 fucking years old. I'm not about to. Oh, your prayers aren't appreciated.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like what purpose would that serve other than maybe drive him to his grave earlier? But I really don't want to do that, as long as
Or
he's
just being a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we're on a very tenuous relationship as it is. So what's left unsaid, it's better that way. I might stay in the will this time. Joking. Not joking.
Do it better than I did.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean,
I'm getting $1.
it's kind of been a joke in my family that basically we'll say the rumor, for lack of a better word, because I can't think of the word, was that, neither my brother or I would have to work after my parents passed because I do come from money. My dad has been financially supporting me since my strokes because I've run into financial issues. Like, when I decided to cut my fingertip off, I was out of work for a week. When I broke my ankle, I was out of work for a month. Well, when you can't work, you don't get any money, and it's a little hard to pay your rent. So I would, and
You have to eat.
yeah, exactly. So he's been, when that has come about, he's helped me when I needed help. But we still joke that, when he finally kicks the bucket, that, neither my brother or I will have to work again. But we've been saying that for so long that my brother is, let's see, he's 4 years older than me, so he's 59. So he's 3 years from retirement, and I'm, quote, technically 7 years from retirement. So we'll probably be retired of a dad'll be like 100.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I mean, it's something we joke about, but I mean, seriously and not so seriously, but it's been a long-standing thing in our family, and it's just the way it is. But I'm not going to upset the apple cart. I'm pretty sure, I mean, I'm not 100% sure, I'm pretty sure my dad knows I'm an atheist, and I'm pretty sure, well, I know my brother probably knows because he's probably tracked me down on Google or whatever, and Beyond a Trailer Park is on Google, and so is my blog, and yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, if my one cousin found me through my blog to tell me mom was dying, I'm pretty sure my dad knows. Yeah, that's how I found out. Is my cousin posted a message on my blog saying
Jesus.
Wow.
they had no other way to get a hold of me. I didn't give nobody had my phone number, and her brother knew I had a blog, and I'm guessing he said, "Well, you can try here and get a hold of her that way." My cousin is actually a goddaughter to my mom and dad, so she's not the executor of either of their wills. That goes to another cousin, but my dad left it up to my cousin to try to track me down. And that was the only way, was through my blog, that she probably Googled my name, and Havoc and Cass would have came up under my name, because I use my real name. Yeah, she left me a message to call her, and I'm like, who the fuck is this? Because she used her married name, and she's been married twice, so I couldn't remember what her new married name was, because I don't keep in contact with my family. I'm really bad that way. Like,
Yeah, same. I'm bad about that.
Yeah, like my one cousin, her daughter got married, and I'm like, she's old enough to get married. Because the last time I saw her, she was still in diapers.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm really, really bad, but a lot of it goes to because, my relationship with my parents was so rocky. And I'm not saying it was my parents' fault. I'm willing to take a lot of the blame for that. I was not an easy child to raise. I was also a drug addict and alcoholic, on top of being bipolar. So yeah, it made a mess out of things, and I kind of fucked up my relationship with my family, but you know, my family hasn't made any attempt to rectify that situation either. So there's blame on both sides. But yeah. I'm not going to upset the apple cart. So yeah, it's like taking the context of the discussion, whether you say, oh, it's just a 1600-year-old book or a 400, if you want to go 1611. It all depends. But I just thought it was kind of an interesting, a light topic, one that we didn't have to delve too deeply, although.
Well, I mean, since you have so many King James Version onlys, then I would, be safe calling it a 400-year-old book.
Yeah. Well, it all depends because there's a lot of variations within the 1611 movement. You have some that, they won't even accept the changes in word meanings. Yeah. Like between Elizabethan English?
Yeah.
And modern English. They won't even accept that, certain words don't mean what they think they mean anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Which changes the whole context of the Bible, or context of the passage in the Bible. So yeah, I mean, you have some that will go to that extreme that, it says XYZ, that's what it means. And they are literal over this.
Mm-hmm.
Until it's convenient to be a moral relativist. So anything new on the horizon for either of you that you want to plug?
Not really for me. Just same old. I'm on Twitter. That's mostly where I am. At Mostring, MOSTRING. That's my @ so you can follow me there.
And I highly recommend it. She's got me addicted to Twitter. I go in espresso. No, I haven't quite mastered it yet because I really don't use it that much, but every now and then I get in a few zingers. So, and I should do.
So robust. How could you cram all your stuff in
That's the problem. I can't. I can't because I've tried and it doesn't work. I spend more time composing a tweet than most people do on a Facebook post. But
and it won't let you post it because it's too long.
Exactly, and I'm like, oh fuck this shit.
Do a thread.
Yeah. I should do a shout out to. Let me see. Let me pull up my notes here so I get the name right. The Postmodern Polymath Podcast. I'm going to do a shout out to them just because they actually liked my tweet concerning tonight's episode, so I thought I'd return the love. Thanks, guys. But yeah, I know, and I haven't listened to them in quite a while, but actually, I really haven't listened to much other than I've been kind of stuck on Logic, Device Rhino, Paulogia, Clearly Stated, Arnra. I'm all into Arn. So those are like my 5 mainstays. And I've been going through like their back catalogs, and in case of Paulogia, there's like 200 and so episodes. But I find their episodes so interesting that like today I realized I listened to 2 episodes today that I've already listened to twice. I was like, whoops. But they're interesting, they're very entertaining, and they're very educational. So, and not saying that Triple P isn't educational, but I just have been kind of in that mindset of late. I think I'm looking for something, but I'm not quite sure what it is yet, if that makes any sense. So, but I just thought I'd give them a shout out for liking our tweet about tonight's episode. And Brigitte, where can we find you, my dear?
You can send me a friend request on Facebook under Bridget Fitch, BRIGIDFITCH. And you can find me on Holy Crap the Vlogcast. That's on Saturday nights at 11:05 p.m. Central or 12:05 a.m. Eastern. I don't know what that is in GMT. I think I'm on GMT -5. So anyway, around 4 o'clock in the morning if you're in Paris.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's Is it
Don't
my
know
nose
what the
full?
show topic is Saturday yet, but we always come up with something.
Well, I do listen. Well, I try to. Sometimes I'm not
You
awake.
stop by chat a lot. I see you.
I try to pop in to at least say hi, and sometimes I pop in, and then all of a sudden I pop in, I'm like, oh fuck, I'm tired, and then I pop out and I don't say anything.
Yeah.
And what it is because it's on a Saturday night, it's usually mid weekend for me, and I'm usually at the end of the week, so I'm like, so I can't stay awake.
And it's so late.
Well, and before I got sick, it was no big deal because I was up all hours in the night. Now, like, I do my work shift and I'm just like dead. And a lot of it's because physically, because the right side of my body doesn't work right, my left side has to overcompensate and I get tired easily. I need to probably exercise a little more, but I don't really know how much more I can do. I walk 3 miles a day on my treadmill, so
Wow, that's a lot better than I do.
yeah, but it doesn't seem to be helping as far as the fatigue issue, so maybe I need some vitamin D or something, I don't know. I probably do because I really don't go outside.
Oh, you probably do then.
Yeah, but anyways, and easiest way to find me is Doom998 on Twitter. That connects to my blog, Havoc and Chaos. And it used to connect to my Facebook, which is Bethany Hambridge. And you can find me, if you can send me a note that it's, show related. I'm more apt to accept it. I'm really bad about accepting friends. I have a few pendings that, I'm trying to.
Yeah, I do too. I screen mine. So.
Yeah, I do screen because I really, really, I don't deal with drama, and my idea of dealing with drama is deleting your fucking ass, and not just you, but whoever's involved, just because I don't want to deal with it. I mean, basically, all I use Facebook for is it's a news feed. I have numerous news feeds, so, and I do converse with friends, obviously, but it's usually just general bullshit. I don't get too heavy into stuff unless, you know. But yeah, send us requests. We also, don't forget, we have a show page under Facebook for Beyond a Trailer Park, and we also have a fan page, which is also associated with Holy Crap, and also Steve DeMarco shares his links to Atheist News as well in there, so it's a little bit more interactive than the show page. I find navigating the show page kind of difficult. I don't know if it's just me being stupid or if I'm missing something. I'm not tech savvy, so, but as I said in the beginning, we may have a show Monday, and we'll be dealing with some woo, lots of it, crazy woo, biblical crazy woo. But if not, we will be back on the 6th for sure, and I'm hoping in the at least 2 weeks off we have that I'm going to learn some more functionality of Streamlabs to see what I can do as far as donations and stuff like that. I just haven't had the time lately to really look into it. So hopefully with the 2 weeks off, I'll get the motivation to do that. So, and with that, I will bid you all adieu. You all have a great night, and if we don't see you before the holiday season, whatever your belief concerning the holiday season is, whether you celebrate Christmas as Christmas or Yule or whatever, have a very safe holiday for both Christmas and for New Year's. And we'll see what happens next week. And I should know by Thursday, so I'll post something for sure if we are going to have a show, so you guys can plan ahead. So, Bridget?
Yeah, or if you tune in to Holy Crap, then I'll let you know there too.
Yeah, I do recommend if you just want 2 hours to just chill. Chat's pretty active, especially if they hit a topic that I just have to put my 2 cents in.
We do draw some, entertaining trolls from time to time.
Yes,
too.
you
I don't
do.
know how they found us, but they did.
Yeah. So, for everybody, Bridget, Morgan, and Sammy, if you're listening, you three have a safe and prosperous holiday season and New Year's if I don't talk to you before then. And for sure see you guys on the 6th, if not sooner. Have a good night, y'all.